Okay, let's take another swing at this. My name is Bill Henry. I am the councilman from the 4th District and chair of the Equity and Structure Committee. We are here today to have a work session and voting session for City Council Bill 19-0379, Charter Amendment Ordinance of Estimates. We are joined on this call by Councilwoman Danielle McCray of the 2nd District, member of the committee, Councilman Christopher Burnett of the 8th District, vice chair of the committee, Councilman Ryan Dorsey from the 3rd District, and we are also joined by Sam Johnson of the Office of Council Services, Kaylin Young, Michael Huber, and Rebecca Simmons from the Council President's Office. Oh, there we have Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark of the 14th District. And last but never, ever, ever least, Matt Stegman from the Mayor's Office of Government Relations. Sam is going to put up now the instructions for anyone who is trying to provide public testimony. The instructions are available for anyone who is logged into the video call, but is not a panelist to read. For anyone who is calling in, we cannot identify you by name on the WebEx system. And so when we get to the public testimony portion, call-in members people who are calling in will be unmuted by the host one by one. If you do not wish to testify, simply say so. When you are unmuted, you'll hear 2 beeps, and then you're unmuted. If you do plan to testify, please state your name at the beginning of your testimony. If we cannot hear you, we will tell you to call back. Or if you are participating in the online version of this, you can provide your testimony in the chat function. Similarly, if you are participating online, there is a menu under the participant tab where at the bottom of the window that opens on your right, you can raise your hand to let the host or the chair know that you wish to be recognized. Okay, that being said, we're going to proceed with the business before the committee, which is Charter Amendment 19-0379, Ordinance of Estimates, for the purpose of authorizing the City Council to amend the Ordinance of Estimates to increase items of appropriation or add items for new purposes, subject to certain limitations. There is also an amendment that has been rewritten by the law department with consultation from the finance department. And at this point, Sam will put that amendment up onto the screen. This specifically addresses the concerns that both Mr. Senemy from the finance department and Councilman Clark discussed yesterday to limit the shifting that we are doing to be within the general fund. And you can see specifically the wording in Amendment 1 now reads, by a majority vote of its members, the City Council may increase items of appropriation within the general fund or add items within the general fund for new purposes, provided that the aggregate amount of the increase does not exceed the aggregate amount by which the City Council has reduced or eliminated from the ordinance of estimates under subsection A of this section. And I believe, with the exception of C, an item added for a new purpose is authorized by legislation separate and apart from the ordinance of estimates That is also new. I don't think that was in the amendment previously. Can I get that from Vic or?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is Vic Turvola from the Law Department. I'm sorry, my webcam doesn't seem to be working, but apparently, if you can hear me, my vocal is. So that's good.
We can hear you, and we remember what you look like.
Good. So B and C are what we talked about yesterday. B is, once again, you can take your increases as long as we're talking about general fund, but you can't rob another fund that's specifically dedicated to another purpose to shore up whatever you have in the general fund. So that's what B is. C is an item that we've been talking about off and on, I guess, for the last week, which is because you can budget for a new purpose. The intent of the law department here is to make clear that, yes, you can budget for a new purpose, but ultimately you need to legislate that new purpose, not in the ordinance of estimates, but somewhere else. So certainly you can put aside money for item X, this new purpose, and later on create the legislation that creates the new program, or you can have created that new program in advance, and then when budget time comes in and no one's funding it, you can take money out of somewhere and fund it. So one way or another, C is just attempt to clarify what I'm hoping is an understanding in the city council at this point, that you can't create a ghost account, or you can create a ghost account and fund it. It just has to be legislated in some sort of fashion.
Sure. So I mean, just to clarify for anyone who doesn't spend a lot of time talking about this, just for a very simple reappropriation, like if we cut $1 million from the police department and we wanted to spend that $1 million by opening 2 more recreation centers, so we simply moved that money into the existing budget line for community recreation centers. That would not be a new program that would need new legislation. That's something that the Department of Rec and Parks is already authorized to open rec centers. So that wouldn't need new legislation. Correct?
That would be correct. That's my reading of this.
Okay. All right. So I am fine with the changes made to this amendment.
Question.
Councilwoman Clark.
Mr. Turvola, I'm a little worried that this says it's, I'm talking about C. An item added for a new purpose is authorized by legislation separate and apart from the ordinance of estimates. That makes sense. But when people that wrote this are retired and sitting on a sunny beach, will it be understood that the legislation can follow after the dedication of the transfer of the money to what will be a ghost issue? In other words, well, no, that's my question. Like the way it reads, you would presume the legislation exists, and perhaps that's possible. But you're saying that basically you could do it later. You could legislate and create this whatever later, and then transfer the money. But that does mean you're putting it in a ghost city account. Is there any way to fix the language? Is a new purpose is or will be authorized by legislation?
I think I was conscious of that particular question, Councilwoman, and I tried to write it in such a way that it could be either way. So to me, it's clear that if you do it ahead of time or if you do it later, it all works under the language that we have. And when someone else is no longer, when I'm gone and Elena's gone and Hillary's gone, I think the language is clear enough that it's broad enough to encompass a creation ahead of time or creation afterwards.
Vic, I think I understand what the councilwoman's concern is. If you read C with the 2-1 above it, where it says that essentially the council may increase items provided that an item added for a new purpose is authorized. I think what I share her concern that a future law department, unburdened by the experience of this particular conversation, might read that as if the new purpose does not already have authorization by legislation, then the city council may not increase the item of appropriation.
I see where this is going. So you're looking for extra words that say before and after. I mean, essentially.
Yeah,
Just
that's
like
right.
an item added for a new purpose is or must be in the future authorized by legislation separate and apart from the ordinance of estimates. Just some additional phraseology to allow for the opportunity to deal with it after the budget and not require that it have to have happened before the council is taking action.
You could say is or will be. Just put in the 3 words, or will be.
Actually, I'll be, and that. I was just struggling with trying to make it artful, but Mary Pat, you did an artful job on it, and so I think is or will be worked.
Excellent.
Vic, Mary Pat has a lot of experience struggling with being artful.
I know, I've never achieved it. That's what single syllable words.
Brevity is the soul of wit.
What I'm concerned only about is that we are talking about. I'm mindful of the fact that when we talk about will be authorized, that we are talking about. Well, I understand that if it's will be authorized and you don't get to it to this budget year, then nothing's being spent out of that account. So let's suppose $1 million in item X, and nothing is ever, the program ever isn't set up. Then we're just sitting with $1 million in item X account, but it's not being spent for that entire.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can, the next year you can either have your legislation done or you can, it goes into the account. It rolls over.
Yeah, I'm good with the amendment to the amendment.
Okay, so let's accept that we're going to do the amendment to the amendment by voice, that C will now read, an item added for a new purpose is or will be authorized by legislation separate and apart from the ordinance of estimates. I would ask the committee members to say that that's what we should be considering before us, and Sam will work with legislative reference to get a corrected version of the amendment for the floor if this comes out onto second reader. So are there any other questions or comments about this amendment from members of the committee? Councilwoman McCray or Councilman Burnett?
No. I don't have any further questions.
Councilman Dorsey?
No. Is there another amendment for this? We had another discussion about a similar.
That amendment is already incorporated into this one. They took that one and added to it.
We had this. I asked the question yesterday about the ability to constrain funds by placing conditions for the release of funds. And I was wondering if the law department had addressed that.
Oh, I was not under the opinion. I was not aware that they were going to try to do that by today.
Okay.
If Vic, Elena, did either of you get a chance to work on that by today?
We don't have anything for you. Tell me how, if we want something, we can probably do it as a floor amendment if that's what you're looking for.
Glad to follow up with you about that. Thank you.
Councilman Dorsey will work with you on that to try to do a floor amendment for Monday, again, should this pass out of committee. Having asked all of the council people who I believe are on the call, are there any other panelists or members of the public who would like to ask questions or make comments on the amendment or the charter amendment itself? Looking on the list of participants for anyone with a raised hand, I see none. So I'm going to go to the attendee list, where currently we have no call-in members or attendees. So I believe everyone who is an attendee should be able to raise their hand if they wish to testify. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So seeing no one asking to give additional testimony or ask any questions, I am going to say I would entertain a motion on the amendment.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Burnett. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman McCray. I guess we will read the roll, and that would be the chair votes aye. Councilman Burnett.
Aye.
Councilman Burnett votes aye. Councilwoman McCray. I'm sorry, Councilwoman. I saw that you unmuted, but we didn't hear.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, with 3 yeses and none in the negatives, the amendment passes. I will now entertain a motion on the charter amendment as amended.
I make a motion, Mr. Chair, to move the amended bill.
Moved by Councilman Burnett. Is there a second? Seconded by the chair. The amended bill is before us. The chair votes aye. Councilman Burnett.
Aye.
Councilman Burnett votes aye. Councilwoman McCray.
No.
I believe Councilwoman McCray voted no. So with 2 votes in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, the charter amendment moves forward to second reader at the council's next meeting on Monday, June 22nd. Unless there is any further business before the committee, we will adjourn this work session at this time. I don't have to remind people to take everything you have from the chambers away, but I do have to remind you to stay safe and have a good weekend, and we'll see many of you again on Monday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.